Today I'm speaking with Kim Breuer, founder of LikeMinded, which now merged with another company to Nilo.
So now you can rather think of it as a marketplace, a curated marketplace that has content, library in there, meditations, exercises and so forth, but then group sessions and one-on-ones with psychologists and therapists. Of course, AI in general in healthcare and especially in mental health will play a super big role.
What are kind of the things on the marketing side that you feel are gaining more and more importance?
People want to have ads as real as possible, and if they come from real human beings and are really authentic, that is, I think, where the real marketing magic happens.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for listening to the Future of Consumer Marketing podcast. Today, I'm speaking with Kim Breuer, founder of LikeMinded, which now merged with another company to Nilo. Kim, thanks for chatting with me today.
Hi, Roman. Thanks for having me.
So first question, how did you end up in the space of, mental health, psychology, and what is LikeMinded and Nilo? What are those companies actually doing?
So first of all, I am by background a psychologist. That is one of the main reasons I started a company in the mental health space. I was lucky enough to have had very early access to psychological coaching when I was a teenager, actually. And that was for me like a really breakthrough moment in my life. After which I thought, wait a second, why are we not learning this in school? And that was the moment I decided to become a psychologist. I decided my mission is to bring more psychological knowledge and support to people out there, because I'm a great believer that all of us can use some mental health support to navigate our lives better. And when I started out as a coach and psychologist, besides my studies, I realized there's a huge demand. We have an under-education in our society when it comes to mental health, and we need something that can be scalable. And that was the moment I decided to found a startup in that space and make mental health care more accessible, more understandable, and also scalable for more people. We then started actually in the B2C market with LikeMinded, with group sessions online to connect like-minded people in a group, but then very, very soon decided to pivot into B2B, as there was a high demand from company side coming, and they asked, hey, can you please support our employees? That was also in the times of COVID, which of course helped us a bit because COVID brought the topic to reality and visibility. And we've done that 3.5 years in the B2B market. And then last year we decided to merge with our direct competitor, Nilo Health. And now we joined forces and have become the DACH market leader through this merger. And now we are called just Nilo.
Amazing. I mean, so much to unpack here, but I find it interesting that you started get coaching as a teenager, because back then I remember going to a psychologist or getting coaching was like still not really talked about, right? It was almost like, okay, this person is a bit crazy. If you do that, there's, I think, football teams or basketball teams that use mental coaches, and people are like, what's going on there? And I feel like we've come a long way. At least in my bubble, in my circle, a lot of people use coaching here and there. Where are we in the cycle? Are we already all the way to, it's very accepted, or are we halfway there? Like, what's being in the industry? What's your impression?
So that, in my opinion, really depends on the country we are speaking about. So when we look into Germany, we are probably in stage 1. What does it mean? I think we're at the awareness stage. A lot of people have understood, okay, mental health is a topic. It's doing something bad to people sometimes. And it has become, it has gotten a greater awareness, but that's already where we are at. So when you're talking about your bubble, yes, I think our bubble is at maybe stage 3 or 4 already, where it has become a trend and where we see like a mental coach as a comparable to a personal trainer. But that's definitely not the reality for the majority in Germany. So we are at stage 1. Awareness is there. People understand we might have to do something. But what they still have a question about is, what kind of support and how can we kind of fulfill this gap and this need.
And what are the markets that you would say are most advanced, or where it's kind of most common?
Probably the US, I would definitely say. So I would say they are probably even 10 years ahead of us. And also there probably it depends a bit on the states that we are talking about, but especially on the east side and west side, I think having a therapist is almost like having a personal trainer.
I mean, you basically did what every good company does, a pivot at some point in time, right? So walk us through this pivot from B2C to B2B. Was that mainly driven by COVID, or was it also because you felt, okay, hey, it's better placed strategically within companies versus within, just going into the red ocean and competing with a lot of apps out there in the market?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, when you think about mental health, it's by nature more of a B2C topic, I would say, because it addresses the people and their emotions. You wouldn't naturally think about companies when you think about mental health. But when we started out in the B2C market, we knew that it might become challenging with regards to the cost and price aspect of our solution, because we were building a product in which people get support from real human beings, from real psychologists. And of course, this has a certain price tag. So we knew, let's see whether people are already able and willing to pay such a price. And we also, in parallel, always looked already into the B2B market just to, kind of be able to compare the two different markets. But in the beginning, we thought, hey, if we use group sessions, we can put a lower price tag because we can make the psychological support scalable. And maybe that's already sufficient because there might be a huge need. But then I would say already in this first 6 months, we saw that, first of all, mental health is still stigmatized. A lot of people need education when it comes to the topic. Then secondly, groups is also a bit of a big barrier for a lot of people because they feel like, oh, now I even have to open up to 6 other strangers that I've never seen before. And then thirdly, it was really also a self-payer issue. And that's also, again, a very German market issue, because in Germany, people are just not used to pay for health services, while in other markets, they are more open to that. So after that, we started piloting with 2 companies in parallel to our B2C product and market. And then we saw that this is going really well. And out of the blue, more and more companies actually approached us via LinkedIn, via our website, and asked, hey, whatever you are doing there, we read mental health and we need that because our employees are not doing well. Can you support us? And then we decided after 12 months with a hard cut to pivot. And I would say we pivoted within 3 weeks, probably.
Wow.
It was really crazy.
and basically on the B2B side, the product is not a group session, but one-on-ones with a coach.
Yes and no. We still have the group sessions and the platform and the product, but we extended the product portfolio. So now you can rather think of it as a marketplace, a curated marketplace that has content, library in there, meditations, exercises, and so forth, but then group sessions and one-on-ones with psychologists and therapists.
Okay, so it's basically a model where I, as an employee of a company, have access to a lot of content, but then if I want to get, more tailored experiences, I go into groups or I have a personal session.
Exactly. And we even help the users with that. So we do a personalized recommendation through a machine learning algorithm in the back. Nowadays, we talk about AI, not about machine learning anymore. But we help them with their mental health journey that is personalized towards their needs.
Cool. And companies obviously also do the math and always want to see a return on invest, right? So, which can be tricky with mental health, but I think I just read a few weeks ago a statistic that the number of sick days in the Western world is going up, and that's mainly driven by mental health days, basically people taking off because they don't feel well. So, how do you track and how do you convince companies to actually work with you and make sure that there is a good return on the investment that they do? Do you have studies, or is it more kind of case studies, or do you track data by company to show that the health of employees improves?
Actually, all of it. And I think, first of all, it's important to say that mental health still needs a lot of education. And for, I would say, half of the companies, it's already super clear that mental health sickness has become an issue and is increasing in costs. But then there are also still a lot of companies who, I would say, don't care so much about the sick days. Like, not that they don't care about whether their employees are sick or not, but they don't see it as a huge cost factor, or maybe they never looked into it. Mm-hmm. And for those companies, sometimes there are different reasons to go for a mental health solution. And it's sometimes like something like employer branding or employee satisfaction. So yes, for some it's sick days, for some others it's rather about employer branding and, like, having a good satisfaction within the team, as mental health has become also kind of a trend topic and employees are asking for it. And about the math, yes, it's super important. And it's also tricky at the same time, because we are actually selling to two people in the company. We are selling, first of all, to the HR people, who I would say do not care so much about the math. They have an emotional need. They feel it every day, and they are just 100% sure, I want to have it. I understood why. But their CEOs, who are finally taking the budget decision, they want to understand the math. So they really want to have an ROI calculator that we are also offering. So we do the math with the company. We prepare kind of our HR champion to also deliver those numbers to the CEO. And yes, we are also working with own studies that we do in-house, with case studies with our own clients, but also basing our assumptions on publicly available studies, of course.
Okay, cool. And then obviously you also want to make sure that people use the service, because I mean, from my experience in our companies, a lot of times you have employees, let's take language class. They'll say, hey, we want to learn German when we come here, and everyone's excited about that. But then you offer that, and then after 1 or 2 sessions, people are like, oh, it's hard, and I have so many projects to do, I don't have time. And then people don't actually use what you offer, and you have a lot of churn. So how do you make sure that people are activated and start using it and stick with it?
Yeah, I think maybe to start with the first point you mentioned, it is not even natural, or let's say easy, in the B2B space to even activate people and get them to register. So that might be easier for a B2C product where you're super close to the end customer. But for a B2B product or benefit, if you look at average statistics for some benefits that are in the company, you usually see an average usage rate between 3 to 10%, which is super, super low. Because as a B2B benefit, you always have the challenge to get through to the people. And we are quite proud of the activation rates that we are reaching. So we are reaching rather and on average a registration rate of 40% over all our clients and companies, which is super high. And I think one of the reasons is that we try to be as close to the end customer as possible through online live kickoffs, a lot of communication. We completely support the rollout over 3 months with a very intensified communication and marketing within the company. Sometimes we even go there if it's a big company and have like live kickoffs within the company. So we already put a lot of effort into this onboarding process in order to make sure that we are really close to the people. Because if you're just sending out an email, no one will really care. Yeah? And I think that's the first point. And then the second point about retention. Also here, I think we are lucky with the kind of service that we are selling. Of course, there's still room to increase retention afterwards, but since we are offering also live formats and one-on-ones with real human beings, which people love, it's quite easy to make them come back. And it feels a bit like, if it's not just a tech product, I think retention is just higher, compared to maybe a meditation app. where everything has to do with your own discipline, and coming back and working with your own phone is, of course, not as engaging and exciting as talking to a real person on the other side who's actually helping you and listening to you for 1 hour. So I think we are quite lucky with the service we are selling. It's not too difficult to.
Yeah, and you have accountability, right? Like with your personal trainer, if you don't show up, they're like, you're disappointing a human, right? In a way.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's also an important point when we're talking about AI therapists and AI coaches in the future, because I think the discipline to actually go to your AI coach will definitely drop because it's not a real human being.
Yeah. I mean, if you can fake it, that it is a human being, if it's, but that's a different story.
That's a big question. Yeah.
So let's talk about the type of companies that use actually, the service. Is that mainly tech companies, startups? Like, what are the type of companies that really get it? What are the companies where you would have expected that they get it, but they don't, and where it's a bit harder to sell it? And what are generally the main concerns?
Yeah. So the easiest target group, I would say, are definitely tech companies. Yeah. So they are the companies like the innovators, the early movers and adopters who jumped onto our solution quite early on and were our first clients. I think, first of all, because they are very open for technology solutions and very used to it. And secondly, because mental health has arrived in tech companies. And then the second group that we approached and were also quite happy with are, let's say, modern mid-sized companies who want to invest in their employer branding, who want to invest in their employees and satisfaction, who want to invest into their culture. So I would say more traditional companies, but that want to become, or that want to be more modern, and that want to really innovate and transform themselves. And then the rest is basically all the very traditional Mittelstand companies in Germany, but also corporates are way more difficult to educate and definitely part of the later joining majority. And those companies, because you asked, where we thought it would be easier and what surprised us, I would say is actually high performance environments like consultancies and finance industry. Because when you talk to them, like when you talk to partners or CEOs of those companies, they usually say, oh, we do need this because we have such a high pressure in our company and we want to support our people. But then again, they kind of shy away from the topic because I think they feel like if we're now starting with a mental health solution, we might open the box of Pandora. I don't want to look into this. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
and people start demanding 40-hour weeks.
Yeah, and maybe they'll be like, hey, sorry, but now you're offering us a mental health solution. Maybe we should talk about reducing the hours from 95 to 75 first. I think that's what they're afraid of. So this is an industry that is rather difficult. Yeah.
Got it. Let's talk about brand, because obviously, and I think you generally it's mental health, as you said, it's a topic of trust, and we also have a lot of individual humans that you probably carefully select, so we can go through the process as well. But now you have this special situation where you have two brands that have been built, that were probably different, and now you're basically merging them. So walk us through the process of how easy or hard it was also for the different clients to merge. How the process worked, just from a brand perspective.
Yeah. So I think, first of all, when considering a merger, we obviously talk to different players in the market. And I think one of the guiding aspects to join with Nilo Health in the end was also because we felt we were closer than with the others. Yeah, we felt like our cultures were closer, our brands were already closer, and also the quality of our products. So I think if you're deciding to merge with another company, most often these aspects probably already align at least a bit better than with others. And then actually we sat down. So we started the rebranding process 4 weeks after the merger already. And we sat down with a little rebranding squad, marketing team and product team together and thought about what do we want to be with this new brand. And we also looked at what were the strengths of each of the brands previously, but what were also the weaknesses. And then we decided to bring together the strengths, and with those strengths on both sides, kind of create the new and better brand. And that's what we've done. And it took us, I would say, 2 to 3 months to do this process, of course, with all founders involved. And we launched 4 weeks ago, kind of the new brand already. And yeah, as I said, we try to bring together both the best out of both brands and both worlds. And let's see. Now we are on the market and we have to figure out whether that worked or not.
So that probably gave you also the chance to see, okay, what are some of the brand values or the key points that work and maybe some that don't work. So what actually has worked in terms of how you positioned the two companies and what hasn't?
Yeah. So what worked for both of us, and that is also something we took with us into the new brand, is positioning us as the high quality product in the market. And that is something that we want to keep and double down on, because especially when it comes to something like mental health or health in general, people want to build trust and have credibility. And they want you to be kind of the thought leader in that space. They want you to have authority, and don't be too startup here, because it's still healthcare. And I think this is something that we double down on now. What hasn't worked too well at the same time, even though it's close to that part of the brand, is in the beginning, both LikeMinded and Nilo, because of doubling down on high quality and working with real psychologists and so forth, we also put a lot of focus on clinical aspects, and we probably appeared a bit too clinical here and there, which is something that hasn't worked out so well. Why? Because when it comes to companies and selling a mental health solution and the benefit, we realize that most people don't want to buy a crisis intervention. Yeah. And when you talk too much about like the clinical background, it's all, scientifically validated and so forth, it might come across as like a medicine product. And then companies feel like, oh, I'm actually kind of giving my people a medicine product and assuming that they are all sick. So they didn't want to be perceived as we are talking about sickness and now we have the health solution, but they rather wanted to focus it a bit more on the light aspects like prevention and personal development, professional development. And that is something that we're now trying with the new brand, to get away from this health and clinical aspects into prevention and professional development, but still show we have high quality and everything is scientifically proven. I think this is a good explanation of what has worked very well and what hasn't worked so well.
No, those are really good examples. Let's talk about marketing. I think obviously there's probably a lot of things that you tried out. So always interesting to see what worked and what hasn't worked. But one thing that you're really good at is obviously also storytelling and kind of LinkedIn personal branding. So I think you have over 24,000 followers, usually successful. Does that translate also into leads and sales? Or is it more of a initial awareness point and then you kind of retarget? Or how does it fit in your overall marketing strategy in the B2B context?
Yeah, and that's also one good aspect that was different in the two companies, I would say, and probably also has a relationship with our history. We noticed that the brand of our competitor was a bit more, let's say, a bit more company, a bit more B2B focused and maybe a bit less approachable, while our brand was a bit more approachable, a bit more B2C focused, and really related to a human being, because we decided very early on that we want to have me as the face of the company and attach our brand to a real human. And that is something that we are also now keeping in the new brand, because we saw that this is definitely a way for success and that it works in that space. Because you're talking to people, you're talking about emotions, you're talking to their emotions. So we really figured out it's a very personalized topic and people want to see a real human being behind it. So I can only say that building that brand on LinkedIn opened a lot of doors for us and was definitely the right way, which we would always do again. Secondly, we also realized that offline events and building a community offline is also a real inbound lead generator for us that has a super, super strong conversion. So this year we are even more doubling down on offline community events and really increasing that community in the HR space and talking to the people in real life and not just through ads on LinkedIn.
Cool. I mean, any big learnings from your journey on LinkedIn? Like, what are some of the do's and don'ts? I mean, there's probably, if you ask 5 people, they have 25 different recommendations, right? But what were kind of things that worked for you? And maybe just walk us through what percentage of your clients, for instance, had a touch point with the brand and you on LinkedIn. Is it like 10%, 50? Yeah.
To answer right away the last question, I would say it's probably rather 30 to 50%. Yeah.
Which
and
is
most
quite
of
a lot
them
still.
kind of, most of them always come to us or talk about it also in sales discussions. Hey, we know you from LinkedIn, or I know Kim from LinkedIn, or whatever. And even funny situations like people approaching me on conferences. Hey, Kim, I read this article. I know you. Or CEOs who approach me and say, hey, I really like the view, how you view on mental health, like how you view mental health. And I think it goes hand in hand with our culture in the company. So you really notice people start building trust, not only with you as a person, but with the product you are building, because you share it openly. Mm-hmm. And I think that is super, super strong. And then about the do's and don'ts, I don't actually know whether there are so many don'ts on LinkedIn. I would say just try it out. But in terms of do's, I think first of all, consistency. And rather ship your posts, even if you're not 100% happy with them, because it's really about consistency and the LinkedIn algorithm really tracks it. So if you have like huge gaps between your posts, the LinkedIn algorithm will decrease your visibility and you have to kind of rebuild.
So what's kind of the time frame? Is it weekly or monthly from your point of view, or?
Weekly. Yeah, unfortunately, It's weekly. It's a lot of work.
Damn.
And I would recommend to post at least 1 to 2 times per week. 2 times is probably better. I mean, it also depends on the growth goals that you have with your own reach and visibility. But the more often you post, the better. Yeah. And then I think a second learning is don't over-engineer it. So in the beginning, I was so perfectionist about my postings, and I wrote like 2.5 hours one posting, and afterwards they didn't even fly. And I was like, okay, no, I'm not going to do this again. I have to become more efficient. So really try to ship the post and don't be too much of a perfectionist.
Yeah. I mean, if you see that presidents of big countries just, tweet in 10 seconds, then I think all of us can just, fire away on. Yeah. But no, I mean, it's exactly. A good point, because I think ago there was no such thing as personal founder brandings, right? And I think that maybe it was a bit more about, okay, I want to have a press clipping here and there. And I think this changed a lot with social media, and it requires a lot of people to kind of get out of the comfort zone. And I think LinkedIn is probably the entry step. I think Instagram and TikTok are even harder
100%
or less natural. But no, I think it's almost a must have, right? For every single founder to kind of be present and publish, and have a direct relationship to people, right?
I would definitely say so. And I think, some of the listeners are probably even bigger marketing experts than me, but I think one of the trends we see in marketing is that people, if you ask yourself, we are not even reading any ads anymore, right? Like we've become so blind for some random digitalized ads. And we're not even listening to them when we hear them somewhere. We're not just seeing them when they are on LinkedIn or wherever. So I think people want to have ads as real as possible. And if they come from real human beings and are really authentic, that is, I think, where the real marketing magic happens. And that is why has become so important to build, a founder brand behind your product, especially I think when you're building a B2C product. And then, of course, Instagram and TikTok are probably the better channels than LinkedIn.
Okay, got it. But really, really interesting. And then the second part you mentioned are those offline events. How did you kind of experiment with them? Was that kind of by choice, by coincidence? And what did you learn, after having done a few of them? What works and what doesn't?
Yeah. So I think in the beginning, we were just super selective to be on conferences because, of course, it's always a big cost factor for startups. And in the beginning, after the first year, we thought we have to drop it because it went so badly and we didn't have good results, but spent a lot of money. But then we gave it a second chance. We did a better preparation and also after work. And that really worked for us. And one big learning is if you go on to conferences, you have to do super good preparation and you have to do the work afterwards. Otherwise, it won't work. But if you do that well, in our opinion, the conversion is way higher than just through normal inbound and outbound through calls. I think that's the one thing. And then the second kind of live events or offline events that we do is really kind of HR community events. So we bring on stage some like big influencers, faces that are known in the community. We do panel discussions. We offer great food. Food is always good, important. That makes the people come and then have like really great discussions. So they start forming a relationship with us. And that is also a really great, success factor for us in marketing.
Interesting. I want to zoom in on the conference part because there's also a lot of people that say conferences are so 90s and having a booth there and then waiting. So, but you said something interesting. You said, okay, it's important to kind of be well prepared. Is that just making sure that you have all the right meetings in place beforehand, or that you kind of organize also events around the conferences? Or what does that mean in your context, or what has worked for you?
Yeah, I think both of or all of it, what you mentioned, because you have to make sure that you have some sort of visibility besides your booth. Yes, being at the booth is nice, but also try to have side events so that people already know you. What is also very, very, a very good success factor is having a speech on stage. That is actually for us a big precondition by now. So we say we only go to conferences if we get a speaking slot because it makes it so much easier to get visibility. And then afterwards, I just say on stage, and now visit us at the booth right there. We are waiting for you. We can exchange. So that is really one lever you should use. And then maybe try to be creative at your booth. Yeah. Maybe you offer something that the other booths don't offer so people can buy. It's also helpful.
Cool. Let's talk about trends. Those are already two exciting, approaches that you do. What are kind of the things on the marketing side that you feel are gaining more and more importance? And what are things that you now try to experiment with and feel that they have a good shot of becoming good revenue drivers and sales drivers?
Yeah. Yeah, as I said, I think for us, really this community aspect and building this community is a big one. And I wanted to add also with regards to those conferences and offline events, I think it really also depends on the industry you're in and you're selling to, because I would say we are selling to HR. And HR is by nature, or people who work in HR are by nature people who like to connect, who like to be in communities and who like the exchange. So I think that's also important to keep in mind. And this is also why this is really working for us so far. And I mean, I would say we just started. Yeah. So we just started to implement such HR events in a regular manner. We started to work with HR influencers on LinkedIn. That is also quite new for us. So not just building my brand, but also really working together with famous HR influencers on LinkedIn. And these are two trends, like those events, community building and doubling down on influencers on LinkedIn that are known in this space that really work for us. Why does it work for us? Because if you build thought leadership and if you build with you work and market with trusted thought leaders in the space, it gives you again authority and credibility, which in our case, when it comes to a very sensitive topic like mental health, is very important.
Yeah, 100%. And then let's do the same for actually the product for your mental health coaching and content product. What do you feel are the biggest trends there? Is AI a big thing? I mean, that's probably a big thing in every industry, but how do you apply that? What are some of the other big trends in terms of where the products and the services are developing?
So, I mean, I can only speak about like the mental health B2B solution right now. But for us, also like one feature that is really appreciated and is going in an interesting direction is our HR dashboard. The HR dashboard is like the admin dashboard where people can see anonymized reportings about the usage of our platform and also about the feedback, all of that, of course, anonymized. And what we see is that there is an ask of even showing more and more data, right? Because companies have this urge and need to really track it. They want to understand, are my people actually doing better? Are they increasing their mental health? Are they increasing their skill set? And companies really want to track that and see that in data. So I think this is going to be a huge trend and something also we want to double down on now with AI. It becomes also easier to analyze those data and track it and give good recommendations as conclusions out of it. I think that's the one thing that very part of our product. And then the second trend, of course, AI in general in healthcare and especially in mental health will play a super big role. So, of course, I also hear oftentimes the question, especially from investors, yeah, but what if your product is completely replaced in 2 years by an AI therapist? What do you do then? Like, that's a common question. And to be honest, I think we will work with AI therapists and in general, like human beings will work with AI coaches and therapists because there are so many great use cases. And probably I just know it from myself. I'm already using ChatGPT as my personal coach, and it doesn't even have a voice or voice it does have, but it doesn't even have a picture or a video yet. And I think AI will just become more human. But I think our view on it is that in the end, you will always have, when it comes to your mental health journey, a combination of those formats. So probably people still want to talk here and there to a real human being and have this feeling of, okay, I'm actually talking to someone who's been there, who has maybe experienced a similar situation, who has more life experience than me. But then again, there will be a lot of use cases where I maybe even lowers the threshold because you can talk to an AI about everything, about every shaming aspect that you might not want to share with a human being. And we will definitely make use of AI in order to scale our solution even more so and also increase margins at some point. So, yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I actually know from a few friends, from 2 or 3 of my friends who are talking to me. It's like, hey, I have this relationship issue or this personal, career issue. And then I solved it because I was driving 4 hours in the car and talking with, ChatGPT or Claude or another AI tool for 4 hours. And then it got solved. And I was like, wow, that's insane. Yeah. So instead of listening to a podcast, you literally talk to AI to solve or help at least get some new ideas and perspectives on personal topics. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I also use it as my couple counselor.
Cool. Yeah. I mean, that's absolutely a game changer. I think as long as AI doesn't take your side all the time. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It will make it better. All of it. Like the mental health care will improve. The diagnosis will improve. I think it can just be a lever to make it even better.
100%. So if you think about kind of scaling the business 10x from where it is now, what are kind of the big blockers that need to be overcome from your point of view?
I think one of the big challenges is still to move from that stage one, I would say, where people have awareness that it is important, to the second stage of what can we actually do about it. So this understanding, this whole education is still a challenge for us. We do so much education. And I think once we move into the stage where the society is finally educated and you don't need to explain why you have the different formats and how they work, I think that will definitely increase the growth immediately. And then I think also reaching a certain majority, right? Like we are now serving more than 400 companies in the DACH market. And I think once we reach, for example, 1,000 companies in the DACH market, I think you reach a majority or a portion of companies, from which point it's more than a nice to have, and it becomes a must have, and it becomes normalized that companies offer support for it. So I think these are like still having some patience, educating the market more and more, and just moving forward. It will definitely help in order to scale it to 10x. And then the second thing is, entering other European markets, which is also something we are looking into right now, either through organic or even inorganic growth, because you do have some cultural differences in the countries, and it can be sometimes easier to work with a functioning team in the other market already to be faster there.
100%. So maybe last question for founders who look to build in the health tech space. What's one piece of advice you wish you had when you started?
One piece, there are so many, but let me think about it. I think the main thing, so ask yourself, when you build in healthcare, are you building in the intervention, so clinical space, or are you building in the prevention space? Yeah, because these are very, very different areas, and they come with different requirements and advantages and disadvantages. And I would even say, depending on which area you are building, you should really consider in which market you start. Because my biggest learning is in Germany / Europe, excluding some countries like UK and Netherlands maybe, and maybe the Nordics, prevention is not a big thing yet. So yes, in our bubble, we are talking a lot about longevity. We are thinking about reducing alcohol, sugar, and so forth. But the majority thinks about health in a way where they think, okay, if I'm not sick, I'm healthy, right? So I'm going to act on my health when I'm sick. And that's like the mindset of the majority, especially in Germany and some other European countries. And in the US, I think this mindset has already shifted a bit. So really ask yourself, in which area am I building, and is it the right market to start in? That's some great piece of advice. So hopefully you'll inspire a lot of next generation founders in the health tech space. Kim, it's been a pleasure having you. Congrats again on the merger, and hopefully we'll read and see way more of you in the future. Thanks, Roman. It was fun talking to you. Bye-bye.